Hello, my name is Piers Fawkes and welcome to this event. The Future of Retail Sessions 2021 has been brought to you by PSFK, Retail Innovation Week and our partners at Suzy. The most successful retailers over the last 12 months and maybe over the next 12 months are the ones that have relied on resilience. They've invested in infrastructure, they've invested in culture, and by doing so, they can pivot and respond to constant change. Today, we've invited members of our community, experts in our community, to talk about how retailers and brands can become more agile, can become more aware. And we've also have experts from our community who will talk about consumer insights. They will talk about the changing consumer needs and how that's driving the future of retail. The event today has been supported by our partners at Suzy, an online consumer insights platform. The agenda will run in two parts. The first part will be around the strategies that retailers and brands need to employ to become adaptive, agile, and aware. And the second session will look at consumer insights and we'll look at the changing consumer needs driving the future of retail. The framework of the event has been based around a research report created by the PSFK team called The Future of Retail 2021. I'm excited to have my colleague Scott Lachut join us today. Scott is partner who runs the research and strategy practice at PSFK, and he's going to help us set up the event today by taking us through the themes of that event that are driving this concept of resilience. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Piers. Happy to be here and excited to be sharing some highlights from the report with everyone today.
That's great. I'm looking forward to hearing from it. Take it away.
I will get started in earnest, but as Piers mentioned, every year when we approach the Future of Retail report series, we try to take a different approach and specific angle on things that we're seeing within the marketplace. And this year was all about resilience. Obviously, given everything that had happened in 2020, we were really focused on the retailers and brands who were well poised to deal with the disruption and the chaos and have emerged perhaps even stronger as a result of everything that has taken place. How do we define resilience? For us, resilience points to a company's ability to rapidly respond to disruption or change. And we see that really from the standpoint of these three kind of key ideas here, which we explore in more depth within the report. One is a data-led understanding of customers and operations based on continuous listening. And certainly that is across all different touch points and all different phases of your supply chain and operations. And really what we're trying to achieve here is a singular version of the truth as it applies to being informed by data and insights. When it comes to the internal sort of operations and the way a business ultimately is run, we see collaborative communications and processes are necessary for a business to be able to not only see what's happening, but also pivot from business as usual. And again, recognizing that disruption in some way, shape, or form is going to be business as usual moving forward. And so as a result of that, we see this need for a multi-directional culture. So not just top down or bottom up, but just communication sort of across the board, and then adopting an experimental mindset as a result of that as well. And then finally, from a resource allocation and asset point of view, needing to have flexible resources and assets in place to reutilize or redeploy where needed. And that's everything from technology investments, the people who you have working for your organization, both at HQ and at the front lines, and then from an infrastructure point of view, particularly as we think about the future of the retail store, the supply chain, et cetera. At a very top level, I just wanted to share how we've broken out this report. I'll get a little bit more into detail with each of these, but we looked at this from three levers that we're calling, and ultimately these are supported by a number of trends. And this is a pretty standard way for us to think about the report. Within each of these trends, we have examples of change. We have a lot more data and information that we've shared here as well. But needless to say, these are all sort of tied back to how we define resilience here at PSFK. This first idea of sustained awareness really relates back to that idea of data and information. From us, from our point of view, we see this sort of being shaped around three core ideas. One is improving the actionable data collection that you have as an organization. And again, this is related to your customer, your operations, what your competitors are doing, and being able to know what's necessary for success, and then being able to pull the right insights from that information as well. This idea of information silos is something that needs to be broken down within organization hierarchies and across departments. Everyone needs to be able to have access to the information that that is necessary in order for them to perform their jobs successfully. And again, this goes back to that is as best as possible trying to achieve a singular version of truth. And then finally, having foundational analytics, ultimately taking this unstructured data and being able to pull insights and take action as a result of that. Within the context of the sustained awareness theme or lever, if you will, we look at everything from omni-channel CRM, again, understanding who your customer is, pulling data not only from your digital operations, but also from your physical operations as well. And thinking about how you take a broader understanding of your consumer, not just as they interact with you directly as an organization, but in their broader lifestyle. And just to give you a sense of one of the examples that we highlight within the context of this particular section, we wanted to take a look at New Balance, who had adopted a cloud data management system across both its North American and European retail stores and offices. And ultimately, this enabled the retailer and brand to be able to track each of their customers' shopper journeys, both in a digital and in-store context, and then share that information out across various teams. So that based on that information, they could do everything from update their marketing to their inventory planning to their channel management strategy. And lots of other great ideas that we share within this particular section. But in the interest of time, I will continue pushing forward. Just a couple things to think about here in terms of to-dos. Again, thinking about how data is shared across departments, and even within the context of operational teams, supply chain, back office staff, and frontline workers, very importantly, having access to analytics, thinking about where that information comes from, not just from digital, but also from the physical aspects of the retail ecosystem as well. And then also considering how you make that information available to key partners and collaborators within your broader operational team, ultimately. The second section looks at what we're calling adaptive decision-making, which is really a focus on internal culture, work processes, training, etc. Obviously, big disruption that pushed most operations to be distributed and in people's homes. And so requiring agile work processes, communication streams, new ways of collaborating to enable things to continue moving seamlessly forward. Also recognizing that strategy needs to be redeployed and redirected based on the insights that you pull from the information that we're talking about in section number 1. So this is taking that information and being able to adapt to that. And then finally, creating a systematic approach to experimentation within the context of your organization. And we think this is hugely, hugely important. Embracing this idea of of being in beta within the way that you approach innovation internally, how you empower the folks within your organization to make that a part of their day-to-day operations, and then testing, learning, and then making changes based on that. Again, within the context of this, we look at everything from new collaboration tools that are being deployed within the context of organizations, utilizing new ways of thinking about manufacturing, not just creating a set of products for rollout as part of a launch, but waiting until you have an understanding of what the market is interested in and being able to quickly ramp up manufacturing as a result of that. And then as well, thinking about the training and the new skills that are necessary as a part of that workforce moving forward. Certainly we saw things like in-store staff taking on new digital capabilities, et cetera, within this. And thinking about the roles of employees moving forward and the skills that are necessary. Within the iterative innovation trend within this section, we look at 7-Eleven, which we think is doing really interesting things in terms of how it's experimenting and rolling out new innovations. First at a select number of its evolution stores, which is a new format that the retailer is starting to ramp up and roll out across the country. And they're testing new things within that, within each of those stores. So things like new mobile checkout technology. They have what's called their 7 Now delivery app. And then various sort of marketing and other brand activation things that they're testing as a part of this. Based off of the information that they garner from these small rollouts, then they consider what works and then roll that out to its broader network of stores, both in terms of its existing footprint and then anything new that it's looking at building out moving forward. So some things to keep in mind here. Obviously, there's a lot of resources and investment that are being put to external facing innovation, but from the standpoint of how you think about internal innovation as well, putting that same level of investment and resources behind internal R&D efforts. Importantly, thinking about how you bring employees along as stakeholders within that process. Particularly if you're thinking about rolling things out to frontline associates so that you have buy-in and make sure that those technologies are going to be useful and used as a part of this. Again, thinking about the long-term growth of your teams, what technology solutions and training do you need to have in place? And then in terms of long-term, what are the new skills that are necessary, both sort of now and into the future? And then embracing this idea of imperfection as a part of the way that you treat innovation within the organization, and always be using this idea of experimentation as a learning mechanism, and refining that based on this sort of iterative approach. And then the final section we discuss here is what we're calling modular infrastructure. For us, this is all of the physical assets that exist within a retailer or brand's operations. So everything from being able to reorganize or redeploy retail channels and production chains, thinking about the physical footprint of your stores, and how you sort of update and tailor what happens within the physical space as a result of shopping habits and needs. Certainly some really interesting things happening as we see stores becoming more of an extension of the digital shopping journey. And so less about in-store sales perhaps or transactions, and more about things like services and playing a role within delivery and distribution. And then ultimately thinking about understanding what your operational resources are, and then being able to reallocate them as necessary. And again, based on the data that you're pulling down as an organization. Within this, we look at a number of trends, specifically thinking about things like localized supply chains. Obviously, with particularly early on in the pandemic, we saw a shift from sort of global supply chains and all the disruption that was happening there to having a more localized approach to sourcing and manufacturing and warehousing, and how that helps provide more flexibility and avoid disruptions. Thinking about the role that stores play, so moving from again, sort of transactions, things like services, even a switch to something that we're calling cross-channel clienteling, which is all about the way that the physical store supports the online buying journey, live streaming and different things related to that. And then all of the various ways that stores are becoming new assets within the supply chain from the standpoint of warehousing and fulfillment. One of the ideas that we, or examples that we bring to life within this section is something that REI is thinking about with the rollout of smaller community regional experiences, which are very focused on specific sports that are popular within a particular location, perhaps biking or snowboarding or skiing. And as a result, everything that happens within the context of that store is very tailored, from repair or maintenance and the experiences that they offer within each of those stores, bringing expert associates in as a part of that. And again, refocusing around services rather than just sales as a result of that, recognizing that they have e-commerce and digital operations that can support that broader sales as a part of it. And then finally, within this section, again, treating your retail space as a long-term investment. Obviously, some of that is owned spaces or long-term leases, and recognizing that you need to be prepared for shifts within how those storefronts are ultimately going to be used, and taking that testing approach to see what's ultimately going to appeal to your strategy or your customers. And we do see a big shift to this sort of idea of local being really important, particularly now and moving forward. As the function of these stores shift, thinking about the way that you measure the success of each of those stores around new KPIs. And then finally, thinking about how you create more ownership within the standpoint of how individual associates take a bigger role within that experience that you offer your customers, and then thinking about moving away from some of these static aspects of a store, like a physical checkout, and moving that to mobile, so that there's more fluidity into how that is offered from a customer-facing standpoint. That brings us to the end. I know that there was a lot of information that was covered as a result of that, but really excited to have the opportunity to share this with you. I know the upcoming conversation will touch on a lot of this as well. And please download and ask us your questions. Thank you.